And that intro is just too good to pass up, because today we're going to explore the idea that if you want to know God better, remember His words. Not only do you need to read them, you need to remember them. So why don't you go ahead and have a seat, Ron, and you can listen to the lesson with the kids. Right. Now today we're going to look at the 4th chapter of Matthew, which is in the first book of what? The New Testament. Very good. Now you probably remember that the first 4 books in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all record the things that happened while Jesus was here on earth. Now what we'll hear about today happened just after Jesus was baptized. Do you guys remember that? You remember that story at all? When Jesus came out of the water, Jesus saw the Spirit of God in a form of a dove, and he actually heard God's voice. And he heard him saying, "This is my Son, I love him, and I'm pleased with him." Now that's a pretty high moment, right? So do you know the next verse, what the next verse says? It says that Jesus was led into the desert where he was tempted by the devil. Ooh. And that's where we start today. But before we get started, you guys are going to love this.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, group leaders. No, Ron's not going to dance. I want all of you guys. You guys are going to make some noises or sound effects.
And not the kind of noises you think either.
When I say certain words, and Ron here is going to lead you in them. So you want to follow his lead, okay? Now listen up. When I say the word temptation, I want you to make the sinister sound. How many have seen the movie Jaws? Now, I'm impressed because most of the older people in here have probably seen the movie. So many young folks haven't. But it sounds like this.
Da-da, 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 da-da.
All right, very good. Now, some of the other ones are going to be a little easier. When you hear me say Satan, I want you to say,
"That sneaky snake."
Try that. Let's hear you.
"That sneaky snake."
All right. When I say Scripture, I want you to say,
"Remember his words."
Try that. And when I say Jesus, I want to hear,
"He stood strong."
He stood strong.
You guys got that?
Shout it out, all right? Not this week.
You guys ready? Make sure you follow Ron here, okay?
Da-da, da-da.
That's
That's
temptation.
sneaky. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So as I already told you, Jesus,
he stood strong. That's good. That's good.
Was led into the desert where he was tempted by Satan.
That sneaky. Oh wait, it could be 2 of them. No, temptation, not
Temptation.
Sorry.
Adding another layer to this situation was the fact that Jesus,
he stood strong,
had been fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. Now obviously he was what? Pretty hungry. Arguably he was also in a weakened state physically and emotionally. So along came Satan,
that sneaky snake,
the great tormentor who posed this temptation. In Matthew chapter 4, verse 3, it says, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." Now let's think about this for a minute, because Jesus,
he stood strong.
obviously is the Son of God. So it would feel really, really good to prove it to Satan,
that sneaky snake,
to shut him up, right? I mean, honestly, that's what I would do in this situation if I was faced with this temptation. So do you think that's how Jesus,
he stood strong,
responded? No, exactly. Instead, Jesus,
he stood strong.
His answer came straight from the Scripture.
Remember his words.
He said in Matthew 4:4, "It is written, man doesn't live only on bread, he also lives on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Now to summarize, when Jesus,
he stood strong,
faced the temptation, from Satan.
That sneaky snake.
He responded with words from Scripture.
Remember his words.
Jesus
He stood strong.
was actually demonstrating something we need to do. If you want to know God better, remember his words. All right, now this time let's ditch the noises. You guys did a great job, but listen up. On the left side of the screen here, we see Satan's tactics. Satan's tactics. Now next, the tempter took Jesus to the highest point of the temple. Well, to be honest, I don't know exactly what that means because the Bible doesn't give us those details. But I'm thinking they were somehow literally standing on the highest part of a roof or even a wall. Now, since I'm not crazy about heights, this would not have been a happy place for me to be. Anyway, once there, Satan said in verse 6, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down." Think about that for a second. Then Satan reminded Jesus that God would send the angels to take care of him and wouldn't even allow him to trip over a stone. Now again, had I been in that situation, I would have wanted to do something pretty spectacular, memorable. I would have probably been so tempted to prove something to Satan to shut him up. Was that Jesus' response? No. Once again, Jesus responded with what? Scripture. In verse 7, it says, Jesus answered him, "It is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." What happens when you test your parents? You get grounded, yeah. Well, to summarize, when Jesus faced a temptation from Satan, he responded with words from the Bible. Jesus knew that if you want to know God better, remember his words. Now, was Satan done tormenting Jesus? Not yet. Next, he took Jesus to a high mountain. Satan pointed out all the kingdoms of the world, and he said in verse 9, "If you bow down and worship me, I will give you all of this." Now remember, that's Satan talking. And Jesus' response was immediate and sharp. "Get away from me, Satan. It is written, worship the Lord your God. He is the only one you should serve." Then, finally, the devil left and angels came and cared for Jesus. So let's think about Satan's tactics for a moment. When did Satan strike? Okay. But what was he in the desert? Remember, he was fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, so he hadn't eaten. What happens when you don't eat? Weak. You get weak, exactly. Now remember, he was hungry. He was probably irritable. Do you know what irritable means? You're cranky, exactly. And he was physically and emotionally at a low point. So the first tactic we should note is Satan hits you when you're what?
Weak.
When you're weak. Now another thing to note is Satan is persistent. What's persistent mean? Does anybody know? Shout it out. It means you don't give up. Exactly. You just constantly keep on and keep on. Now after all, he didn't give up and go away the first time, did he? Or even the second time. He just kept at it, very strategic and in a persistent way.